President Muhammadu Buhari has agreed to honor an invitation from the House of Representatives to brief the lawmakers on the state of security in the country. The House has on Tuesday passed a resolution asking the president to brief Nigerians on what the government is doing to end insurgency. President Buhari made this commitment to honor the invitation when he met with Speaker of the House of Representatives, Efem Gbajabiamila, at the presidential villa. Although the Speaker said a date has been fixed for the briefing, he did not disclose when the president will address the National Assembly. According to the Speaker, the president remains committed to finding lasting solutions to security challenges in the country.
What we basically sought was to convey the resolution of the House and to fix a date, which we did not fix, out of respect for Mr. President and his very, very tight schedule, what date will be convenient. And we have agreed on a date, and he will meet with the House to address the situation. I think he's more concerned than me or you. That's all I can say. Than me or you. You know, they say on easy lies the head that wears the crown. And we'll leave everything until when he comes to the House. Let me not preempt him. But all I can tell you right now, and the DS is here, the leader is here to bear me witness, he's committed, fully committed to the security of the welfare, lives and property of Nigerians.
All right. So we just go straight to it this morning, Tundu. Finally, the president has said he will talk to the National Assembly and talk to Nigerians. Invariably, I mean, if this is broadcast live or if it's an executive session, I don't know what it will be, the format it will take. He's finally accepted to talk to Nigerians. What's your take on this?
I'm delighted. I think it's really wonderful news that the president has agreed to honor that invitation. And yes, you're right. Whether it's broadcast, whether it's an open session or an executive session, whether he's talking to all Nigerians through our TV sets or through our representatives, he is finally addressing Nigerians, and it's great. And I think those who were trying to coerce the Borno lawmakers to amend their motion and remove that invitation should be guided by the fact that the president himself is actually willing to talk to the people as he ought to. And we have to normalize presidential accountability. This is no longer the military era. And I think because we were ruled by military governments for so long, we have this lingering perception that the executive is to be exalted above the legislature. Absolutely not. There are three co-equal arms of government. So if an invitation is extended, it should be honored. It was said by the House of Reps that the previous National Assemblies did not get this response from the president when they tried to invite him because they were withholding his budget. So the other lesson here, the other moral of the story here is that if the invitation is extended without strings attached, the president ought to comply. So I think this is great. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what the president says.
We were learning a lot of lessons, Dr. Abati.
Well, I mean, when we discussed this subject yesterday, I made a point that there's no constitutional obligation for the president to honor that kind of invitation because a resolution is merely advisory. It does not have the force of enforcement. But that, however, given the state of the nation, the president also has a responsibility to be accountable to the people, and that in this particular instance, we do not see any reason why he should refuse to engage the representatives of the people. Now, the follow-up to that is that the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, now took the step of going to see the president to convey the resolution of the House of Representatives to him personally. And it was after his meeting with the president that he came out and he said he had a good meeting with the president. The president has acceded to the request of the House of Representatives, and that the president has agreed to come to the National Assembly to speak to the representatives of the people. And, you know, he made a point that the president is a Democrat and all of that. So two things, two major takeaways from this. One, this is an illustration again of the fact that the present Assembly, Ninth Assembly, and in this regard, the House of Assembly, the House of Representatives, has a good relationship with the president. It shows that that promise about a good communication line being opened up between the executive and the legislature, it is working. Imagine if it had been a PDP speaker going to the president. You probably will not get the same outcome. But we have heard from Honorable Gbajabiamila, fourth citizen within the ranking in government circles, saying that the president says he will come. But he made the point that, the House of Reps is not dictating any date to him. They have deferred to him for him to choose the date. But what is enough for us is the fact that the president is going to come, appear before the House of Representatives, give a proper account in terms of what his administration has been able to do with security, and also chart the new way forward. And of course, I hope that as he does that, if either he chooses to address a joint session of the National Assembly or the House of Reps that has invited him specifically, I'm hoping that he will take on the two demands, the two concerns of the two chambers. The House of Reps is talking about giving account. The Senate is saying sack the service chiefs. And that hopefully will be part of the point. Although in the last 24 hours, we have been told that the president has again told the service chiefs to do whatever it takes to solve the problem in the northeastern corridor and ensure security across Nigeria. There's a second leg to it. Quite a number of people have been skeptical about whether or not the president would still appear before the House of Representatives or the joint session of the National Assembly. I think perhaps to put that doubt to rest, maybe we need to also hear from the president's, maybe a formal statement saying the president is going to address the National Assembly on this particular date, on specific issues, maybe not even just security alone. And in that regard, I cite the example of former governor of Ekiti State, Ayof Ayoshe, who went on Twitter and said that he will be surprised if the president shows up before the House of Representatives. Now, President Buhari has an opportunity now to surprise not just Ayof Ayoshe, but all the skeptics who think that he does not like to talk, he does not like to give an account. Of course, Ayof Ayoshe says the president sees the National Assembly as a group of unserious people, paper tigers, people who have no influence, who are just warming the bench. President Buhari also needs to reciprocate to show the likes of former Governor Ayof Ayoshe that he indeed takes the legislature of Nigeria seriously and the representatives of the people of Nigeria. Because speaking to them, he will also be speaking to all of us.
Excellent point made, Dr. Batintundu. That's all on news headlines. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have the trio of Rotus Adiri, Michael Wilson, Aaron Akirjala to give updates on Africa, global business and COVID-19 pandemic. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to the Morning Show right here on the Rise News channel. We've got time now for Rotus Adiri. Rotus, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Doctor. So we begin with the central bank. They sent out another circular yesterday to bolster the one that was sent on the 30th of November regarding the international money transfer operators and the remittance of foreign exchange from the diaspora. So remember, initially they said these will no longer be converted to Naira and that you could now collect them. The recipients can now receive them in foreign exchange cash or in transfers into their domiciliary account. So they followed that up with this, an amendment to the procedures for receipt of diaspora remittances. And this was a directive to all the banks to close their Naira ledger accounts that they used to receive initially, before when initially they were saying that they should be converted to Naira, the banks would collect them into accounts. So the central bank said, hey, look, close them. And they also stressed in the second paragraph there that the recipient has the full recipient can actually stress whether they can receive it in cash or receive it in their account. So this is just to bolster the move, the initial move that the central bank made. And we've seen the results. I mean, the Naira again has continued to appreciate on the parallel markets based on this move. So it's pretty much permanent, with respect to what they've actually requested. So, again, with the expectation that demand as we get into the festive season here, which we're already in, should increase. This is it's a well welcomed move. And for speculators that bought, if you bought dollars at what, 490, 495, or 500, and you're expecting that it would appreciate further, you've basically gotten burnt. So based on this move by the central bank, so good move there. Now to the Nigerian Stock Exchange. If you look at the performance yesterday, the markets cooled off a bit. I think it was down by, it cooled off. It was down by 0.26%, closed at 35,056.82 points, 4,598 deals, volume and value there. Look at the market cap, 18.3 trillion naira. But there's been like a 7-day appreciation on the exchange, and so it was a bit of a cool off. So maybe we can say that there was some profit taking. But look at this graph. I mean, look at the growth of the exchange. The market now is up about 30%. But if you think about the fact that the market back in March, April was down 20%, technically, if you carry that 20%, negative 20% to zero, and then from 0 to 30%, the Nigerian Stock Exchange has rallied by about 50% this year. It's incredible. And let's look at Treasury bills, though. Let's just for our viewers, the reason why this is happening. You're still seeing oversubscriptions. That's granted. There are still people who want to park their money regardless of how low the rates are. But this is why you're seeing that drive into the stock exchange. I mean, look at that. Points at the last auction, 0.021 for 91-day, 0.09 for 182. These are abysmal rates. But this has been engineered in order to, get, I guess, banks to lend more, and also the market investors now are looking for anywhere else they can get higher returns, which is why they're going into the Nigerian Stock Exchange. But let's look at the Nigerian Stock Exchange is the second best performing market in the world. Number one, the SP Merval, that's in Argentina. So they're up 31.78%. Nigeria is number 2. This is global low, 30.9. The OMX Copenhagen, that's in Denmark, 22.5. The Kospi Korea, 19.8. The BIST is Turkey. BIST is Turkey, 15. Taiwan, 15.7. S&P, of course, in the United States. The Nikkei in Japan. The Shanghai Composite in China. S&P NZX, that's in New Zealand. So you can see that we're one of the best, second best performing in terms of returns. And November was a very good month. But what about the disconnects to the wider economy? I mean, we're in a period where we're talking about insecurity, right? The president is being summoned to speak to the House of Reps to see if he actually honors that invitation. He says he has. You've got, a wide range of issues. We're in a recession, and yet you have a market that is doing 30% returns. In fact, if we go back to that chart, Argentina, that is the number one Argentina has the best return. Yeah, the Merval. Argentina is facing their 9th defaults on debts, right? Bondholders are holding Argentina's feet to the fire. Argentina's economy is expected to contract by 12.7% this year. Argentina has some of the most stringent capital controls. If you're trying to get dollars in Argentina, you pay some kind of 20-30% premium. I mean, that is an economy that is in trouble, yet Argentina is the best returning stock exchange at 31.78% in the world. So, you have to, and I know Michael Wilson has talked about this in the past, you have to take a step back and ask yourself, how is it that in the face of all these countries that they are in recession, they're facing all these issues, their stock markets are just rocketing through the roof? Mostly it's because of the liquidity that's being pumped into these markets, with central banks trying to prop them up. So that's our update for today.
Okay, Rotus, I mean, there's always been that dichotomy in Nigerian regard between Broad Street and the main street, and how we're going to balance it out. I think pretty much, I think it was Warren Buffett that was talking about it a couple of years ago that said, people that take subways are the ones that give the best advice as regards the capital market, because they know the feelings of the people. But the question should be, how can we bring about more inclusion? How can people tap into this market that is doing quite well? How can the federal government tap into this market that is doing quite well to be able to bolster infrastructure in the country? How can we tap into this market for the general population and to be able to do well? Because it doesn't just have to be the investors. The vitality of every stock market is how it permeates through every angle into the economy. And if a market is doing about 30-31% rebound, then there's a lot of money trickling down around the market. There's about close to over 30 trillion And that money too can be used and channeled into things like investment for road and rail and things like that. So it's time we look at the market. The federal government has done some work as regards that. I remember the Sukuk bond, to be able to get roads working out there. I traveled recently to Benin, and I drove on those roads done by the Sukuk bond and things like that. But we can only do more. And like I said on the show a couple of days ago, I told the speculators to calm down. Now their hands have been burnt.
Well, Rotus, first, biggest monthly gains in about 2 months in Nigeria's stock market. And as you have pointed out, stock markets around the world are bullish in Asia, in the United States, and many people cannot understand why that is the case. Maybe quantitativism, maybe the tech sector doing very well. But here in Nigeria, where the fundamentals are a bit confusing, the question I will ask you is that, is this sustainable? If some of those fundamentals change, say, for example, if central bank increases interest rate on treasury bills, which, despite the low interest rates, are oversubscribed, would that have a corresponding effect on the stock market? Will people just move away? This bullish trend, will it at some point result in a crash of the stock market in Nigeria as we had in the past? So those questions remain. And the basic question will be, even with these gains that people have seen, people still need to be careful about where to invest and where not to invest. I don't know whether you have any commentary in that regard. But as for the central bank, the additional circular that has come out of the central bank, I think that's welcome, that's useful, and I think it's a good move. And I sense that the Central Bank of Nigeria is responding to feedback from its initial move with regard to diaspora remittances. Because what people experience in the past is that, with regard to this diaspora remittances, is that these banks are always saying they don't have dollar, they don't have forex, and they will even be persuading you to collect your money in Naira. And people are not so comfortable with that. So for the central bank to now say, if the remittance is in forex, then you must pay it in that same currency. And I think that it's a very brilliant, satisfactory move, on the part of the Central Bank of Nigeria. But I don't know what you think.
Right. You'll have to hold that thought till tomorrow, Rotus, unfortunately, because we have to move to Michael Wilson. But great, as always, Rotus. I appreciate you, my friend. All right. Michael Wilson joining us now from London, or the village in London, I should say. Michael, good morning.
Just outside, yes, good morning. Asia Pacific stocks, little changed, quite honestly, although another good report out of a private services industry survey out the Caixin from China showed good growth. The United States, now here's going to be a hangover. They've passed a law to kick Chinese companies off the US stock exchanges if they don't fully comply with US audit rules. That's a sort of final, giving President Donald Trump one more tool finally to threaten Beijing before leaving office. It passed in the House by a unanimous voice vote. And after sending it to the House of Representatives in May, it's now lying on Donald Trump's desk at the moment, and it looks as though that's an extra little burden for Chinese companies to actually cover. And a further weapon, really, and that will apply to companies like Alibaba, Pinduoduo, and oil giant PetroChina. So in the United States, more than 100,000 people are now currently in hospitals across the US sick with COVID-19, and that sort of pandemic really is apparently pushing nurses and doctors to their limits. Doctors are saying that they can't remember any disease like this, sickening so many Americans all at once. And some doctors, the quote this morning, it's called an unfathomable milestone. So it's actually very serious for them. US stimulus plan, it's still apart. There are encouraging noises from that, still apart. So the Democrats would like $2.4 trillion for it. Republicans are saying $500 billion will be fine, but there is a bypass bill apparently at the moment on the table, and there are a new date's been set for December the 11th, which suggests to me that's also the date at which new government debt is decided as well. Number one, number two, it puts us in time for Christmas, and number three, maybe enough in front of the official inauguration to have a tweak to that to put more money in people's pockets. So to the global markets then, and equity markets in Europe incurred small losses yesterday. Yes, there was good news about vaccines and so on. It's understood the first doses will be rolled out in a matter of days. There have been several leaps forward, as you know, in the coronavirus, which is amazing, but also dealers are very aware that mass vaccination will take, that process will take months. S&P 500 managed to set another record close. The FTSE rallied over 1% yesterday. That's the London general and international stock market in London. Finding details show mining, energy and banking stocks were quite good. The FTSE 250, which is slightly more taken as an indicator of what's going on in the UK, closed up just over, well, almost to 0.2%. So not a massive day. We've had a little wrinkle as far as the vaccine's concerned. The idea yesterday was doing the rounds that it would go to care homes and the elderly first, but the government overnight rolled back slightly from that, saying actually it will be quite difficult to send it out, difficult to put it into practice. And I was talking to somebody this morning and asking them, so who would actually give the vaccinations? Well, would it be what we call GPs, you would call them doctors, you know, national health doctors going around, but they've got plenty of patients to deal with. And if it goes wrong, who takes the responsibility for it as well? So there's lots to talk about there. UK Brexit, Michel Barnier, the chief EU negotiator, has been told to get tough over Brexit negotiations by Denmark, France and Holland. Not too much out of Germany right now. Angela Merkel's been very patient with what's been going on here. Sterling suffered a bit of a knock yesterday as dealers sort of slightly patience running out. But at the moment, there is still no feeling, even though we're right up against this deadline and all the rest of it, which we've talked about forever, traders don't feel that a no-deal scenario is on the cards. Here's an interesting dilemma for politicians. So our Prime Minister, I told you about how the retail shops like Arcadia, that chain, and also Debenhams are taking a hit, and they will go into administration and have gone into administration. He's being told to protect jobs in retail. Now, the question here for politicians is, yeah, it's fine, and it's fine having a knee-jerk reaction to this, but were these companies doing badly before the pandemic? The answer to that question is probably yes, they were. And this reminds me of things like the mining industry here, which is a very long time ago. But then again, they were asking support, and Margaret Thatcher at the time said, no, it's an industry which doesn't have a future, let it go. Very, very sad, but let it go. Same with British Steel as well, you know, a company which was making the kind of steel that was easily undercut by other more efficient industries, not least of which were Japan and China, actually. But what happened there? Did the taxpayer pour money into propping up industries which actually were in their sunset days in any case? So that's an important question, really. You will have the same thing to answer, no doubt. Commodities, well, a lot of chatter yesterday. We're going to talk about oil, basically. OPEC Plus, still no decision about whether those production cuts will actually take place and so on. There'll be some kind of decision today. And speaking of the day, I know it's the big non-farm jobless tomorrow, but today we get the weekly US jobless figures. It's anticipated to fall a marginal amount from 778,000 to 775,000 rather. Last week's reading was a 5-week high. So you can see this kind of issue about the jobless in the United States bouncing along the bottom. Not too much, but anything encouraging is encouraging. And that is your global view today.
Well, Mike, quickly, the scientists who seem to have done it, and, the United Kingdom looks like the first country to go ahead in the COVID vaccine game, having been the first country to offer emergency authorization. But there's been some controversy, some politics around it, which I would like you to comment on. The EU, the European Union Emergency Agency, is saying that Britain is going ahead of itself and that it has not followed enough, protocol by authorizing this emergency authorization. And the EU is saying that they seem to have a better framework. What do you think of that? And secondly, is this a political coup, as it were, for Prime Minister Boris Johnson? Second, in the United States, in the US, okay, I was going to talk also about the US with regard to the Holding Foreign Companies Accountable Act, which was passed. Well, you talked about China, but isn't it supposed to be a law for every country? And would Joe Biden, when he assumes office, will he continue this trade war with China? Because he was talking yesterday that he's not likely to do anything about the tariffs that the Trump administration has imposed.
Right. So first of all, Joe Biden, no indication that anything's going to change about China. Yes, those laws do apply to other companies as well. As far as the vaccine's concerned, I don't see why we should be the UK has just got just as good epidemiologists as around the rest of the world. And if our drug laws have approved it, then for whatever reasons we have to go along with that. It's not about the EU. The EU can say what it likes, quite honestly, and no doubt they've got their own their own standards that they wish to appeal to. I think ours are fine as far as I'm concerned. Again, I'm not a technical person, but I'm assuming that we have had a long experience of viruses and vaccines in this country in the same way that the EU has as well. I think what they're leaning into is this political thing about politicians actually being seen as, oh, we've escaped now, we can apply the vaccine. Well, as I was saying earlier, it's not as simple as that. The actual administration of the vaccine, the actual getting it into people, actually jabbing people with the vaccine, 1 or 2, probably 2, 3 weeks in between, who's going to take responsibility if it goes wrong, all these things still have to be decided. So it's a very, very complicated picture. And I would add to that, which I was talking about last week, I think there'll be considerable social problems, because I think that even we've got very, very strict lockdowns here, and people will be saying, hang on a second, there's a vaccine, I want it now, I don't want to go into lockdown. We are not an authoritarian state here. So I think there might be a lot of social unrest about this as well. But as far as the EU is concerned, thanks very much. Thanks for your advice. But I think we can be independent about that.
All right. I would have loved to ask you this, but maybe you probably take on this tomorrow. How do we expect Boris Johnson to protect those retail jobs? Thousands of those jobs are going to go. Arcadia was one example. Other jobs are going. Debenhams, will he have to do another furlough scheme? Because I don't see how he's going to create those jobs overnight and how he's going to keep those jobs. But that'll be for you to chew on tomorrow. Thank you so much for your time. As always, from that village just outside London, Michael Wilson there. For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Aaron Akirjala joins us here in Lagos.
Good morning to you, Rufai. Good morning to you. Always a sight for sore eyes, I must say. And good morning to you, Doctor.
Good morning.
Yes, it's a lovely morning. And let's get started with the outlook of COVID-19. I was looking at it globally at the moment. Close to 1.5 million deaths are actually being recorded as we speak. If they can actually help us with the numbers there, you can actually see there is nearing this green milestone at the moment. Over 1.4 million cases have been recorded. Currently, the world is regularly suffering from more than 10,000 deaths per day. If you put it average, if they can actually help us with some of the figures and the breakdown, we've actually seen that right now as we speak, there are 5 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 globally. You can actually see there over 10,000 cases recorded every other 24 hours. As a matter of fact, you can see yesterday's figures came in at 10,868, which is up by 9%. Although we are beginning to see the rate of infection slowing down, we can see it is down by -2%, but the deaths keep rising, which is quite worrying and which is quite frightening. And that is why the news about a vaccine being rolled out in the UK and the rest of the world is a massive reprieve at the moment. But in the meantime, talking about a vaccine, former US President Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton have all volunteered that they will be vaccinated on camera in order to try to convince people to be vaccinated. If I were to just run through the statements, Freddie Bush, that is Bush's chief of staff, has said that provided Dr. Anthony Fauci has spoken to Anthony Fauci and Dr. Deborah Birx. Remember, Anthony Fauci is the top diseases expert in the US, and he said that he's spoken to him to see how he can help promote the vaccine. For Clinton, his press secretary said that he too will be willing to take a vaccine in a public setting to promote it, while Obama, speaking to Cyrox Radio, said that I may end up taking it on TV or having been filmed taking it, just to let people know that I trust this science and I don't trust what COVID-19 is giving us. So that is what all the former presidents of the US are saying. And I must say, which is a massive confidence boost, because remember, President-elect and the Vice President-elect have not really pushed, I've not really garnered the Americans with confidence going in forward with this particular vaccine. But let's see how things actually go out there. We are still waiting and still hoping that that particular stage is actually hit, whereby it will begin to be rolled out in the U.S. fully. We know that the CDC will still be meeting at some point to actually give their emergency use authorization on the 10th of December. They will be meeting, so let's see what actually becomes of that. Just to remind us, those are the breakdown of all the vaccines in the works at the moment. 274 is the number at the moment, so at some point, sooner or later, there will be vaccine globally. It might not just be down to the Moderna, down to the Pfizer, BioNTech effort, or even the AstraZeneca, Oxford University effort. We're going to be getting vaccines globally. Everyone seems to be chipping in the race, and we're hoping that sooner than later we will have things actually rolled out globally. But in the moment, looking at how things are actually playing out in the US, right now, the number of cases, especially deaths in the US, are on a massive rise. And that is quite frightening to people, as the head of the US Center for Disease Control is actually warning that Americans face a very rough winter from COVID-19. We can see the number of deaths there up by 30%, 2,885 were the numbers that actually came in yesterday, taking the numbers to 273,518. Hospitalization is still on the rise, almost at breaking point in the US, up by 31%, which is quite frightening, knowing that at the moment, hospitals might not be able to cope with the numbers leading up to the Christmas period. So we're keeping an eye on that and seeing how it goes. Now, bringing it to Nigeria, yesterday, according to the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, they actually put out a number, 122, were the number of new cases of COVID-19, with Kaduna State leading with 37, Lagos State with 29, Plateau with 25, Ekiti, Rivers, Ogun, Edo, Kwara, Bayelsa, Bauchi, and Kano, all recording numbers. We're also seeing massive rise in South Africa. I must actually put it out there. South Africa also experienced a rise. They're also being fearful that they might be entering another wave. We know that South Africa has been the worst hit on the continent, and we are hoping that they can actually get their grips together. Officials in that particular country are scrambling to contain the infections after a flare-up was reported in the impoverished Eastern Cape Coast and the adjacent Western Cape Province last month.
Okay. Right. Okay. I'm sorry.
Well, okay. I was going to comment first on the example that has been shown by President Obama, President Clinton, and President George W. Bush, saying that they will be prepared to take the vaccine. And we expect that in the United States, as early as next week, maybe Pfizer or Moderna will also get the emergency authorization there. And there are other companies, with their own vaccine candidates that have gone through the phase 3 trials. But the truth of the matter is that either in the United States or in the UK or even in Italy, where many of the citizens are saying that except the vaccine is Italian, they will not take it if it comes from anywhere else in the world. People are very skeptical. It's not, the ordinary man doesn't necessarily trust the science. In some of the countries we have seen that they trust the science only if it is locally produced. So there's some politics, some sense of nationalism around it. And that's why when you have individuals showing the example, prominent persons showing the example, that will mobilize people to take the vaccine. Now, take the United Kingdom. One of the strategies in the United Kingdom, as they have put it out, is to encourage what they call social media influencers, they call them, and celebrities to help drive and educate and enlighten people so that the jabs, more people can take the jabs, so that it's not just the country taking the jab, the individuals who need the jabs will take the jabs. And Matt Hancock on ITV yesterday with Piers Morgan, he was even saying, look, he will be the first to take it, and he will take it publicly. And you have in the US, President Obama saying that he will take the jab and he would like it to be televised. But we should also worry about how countries are responding. Take the example of Japan. The Japanese parliament, 126 million people, the parliament resolved this week that the vaccine will be given out to everybody free of charge.
Yes.
And they have ordered ahead from Pfizer, from Moderna, from AstraZeneca, more than enough to cover that population. And I keep asking the question, here in Africa, who is already ordering, who is already keeping stock, who is already setting up vaccination centers. Because we may say Africa is probably immune, we are not affected, but we also need those jobs. Although I know some people who will behave like the average Italian citizen who will say, no, nobody can come and give me any job, except maybe if it is made in Nigeria. The people know themselves.
All right, Doctor.
Very well said. Aaron, I just want to make a quick comment. Just to further on that, I think the question we should also be asking, and it looks as though since the wave of jabs started and vaccines started, the truth is, are we going to forget monococcal cocktails like Regeneron? Because we should also know that if people have not taken this jab and they come down, they need to be treated for COVID-19. So the things that will help in treating them are things like Regeneron. So are we not also looking at developing that? But we need to go now because of time. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Aaron.
All right. I would have loved to answer that question.